Welcome all my fellow educators and language nerds. It's Kate from the Living Room English Conversation School, and you're watching The Breakdown. The Breakdown is where I take some of today's most popular learning theories and break them down. Today we're going to be talking about learning styles. So if you look at traditional education, it's kind of based on this cookie-cutter way to teach and learn, with the teacher as the source of knowledge and students as these empty receptacles waiting to be filled. Once these empty receptacles, or students as we like to call them, are filled to capacity, teachers usually will assess students' knowledge and how much they've learned through testing, most of the time standardized testing. But the problem is, and it's a big problem, that not all learners fit the same mold. Over the years, psychologists and educators have looked more deeply into learner differences and differences in learning styles. And they found that, unfortunately, traditional education only really caters to a very limited scope of the huge broad spectrum of learning styles that are out there. What this does is it crushes learner creativity, confidence, and even their potential by making students feel stupid or even ill-equipped in the classroom. This can ultimately lead to disengaged students never really knowing or reaching their full potential. This is a problem, my fellow educators. Many or most of you might already be implementing different strategies, techniques, activities, and lessons into your classrooms that incorporate different types of learning styles. And that, my friends, is amazing. If you haven't already, don't fret, because now is your chance to reflect on different theories of learning styles and how you can incorporate them into your classroom, and how you can identify, utilize, and develop classrooms that are inclusive of all types of learners. Today I'm going to introduce two types of learning styles theories. The first one is by psychologist David Kolb, who introduced the Kolb cycle of learning. His 4-stage cycle is similar to when you do an experiment, in that it includes planning, experimenting, reviewing, and reflecting. He argues that learning happens when learners go through all 4 parts of the learning cycle. In terms of individual learning styles, Kolb argues that individual students are usually inclined to one of the learning styles in the cycle. And this preference can be influenced by a variety of factors, including social environment, educational experience, and the individual's own cognition. So what are some of the characteristics of these learning styles, and how can we use them in our classroom? Well, let's take a look. In the Kolb learning styles cycle, learners can fall amongst the different quadrants in the cycle. So the 4 quadrants are diverging, assimilating, converging, and accommodating. So what do these different quadrants mean? Students that fall in the diverging quadrant are characterized by feelings and watching, and they're able to look at the world from a variety of different perspectives. They tend to be more sensitive and are great at looking at concrete situations from different viewpoints. In addition, these learners are great at using their imaginations and work great in groups, as they like to feed off of others' ideas through brainstorming and idea sharing. Assimilating learners are characterized by thinking and watching. This style prefers brevity and logical approaches to problems, and they need clear explanations before putting their ideas into action. These learners are less interested in people and more interested in concepts, and prefer logical, more abstract theories over practical approaches. Converging learners are characterized by doing and thinking, and they prefer technical and practical tasks. They're more interested in these types of tasks than social or emotional issues, and they like to jump actively in and experiment with new ideas. Accommodating learners are characterized by doing and feeling. These learners are hands-on and rely on their intuition rather than logic or reasoning. They like to actively experiment and react on their gut feelings rather than logical analysis. It's important to keep these learning styles in mind so as to create a variety of different activities in your classroom that will cater to all the different types of learning styles. Also, it's a great way for students to understand how they learn, which builds metacognition, and it's a way for students to track their strengths and weaknesses. In cooperative learning classrooms, learning styles is a great way for students to work together. This is because they're able to see where their learning differences are and how they can help each other and cross over their strengths and their weaknesses. By seeing each other's strengths and weaknesses, students can be grouped together by different learning styles, and they can tackle projects head-on from a variety of different perspectives. Another great learning styles resources, and one of my favorites, is by Gardner, called The Multiple Intelligences. In the multiple intelligences theory, there are seven different intelligences that each person has within them. He argues that every person has all of these intelligences, but some are more pronounced than others within each individual learner, giving us different strengths and different perspectives on how we learn and how we analyze the world around us. Gardner argues that this concept of multiple intelligences definitely challenges that idea of the cookie-cutter, one-size-fits-all ideology of traditional education. Multiple intelligences allows educators to branch out and explore different types of activities and curriculum to use in the classroom that can include music and movement and multimedia that gets students interacting and using all of their senses. Knowing your learners' different intelligences can also help you to provide proper scaffolding in the classroom, and it will make your classroom more effective and engaging for every learner in the classroom. So what are these 7 different intelligences? Well, let's take a look. In Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, there are 7 different intelligences that each learner has in them. The first one would be interpersonal intelligence, and these students understand one's own goals and interests very well, and they prefer to work alone rather than in big group work. Some tips for the classroom would be to use journals, individual reflection time, and perhaps an independent study for these types of learners. The next intelligence is interpersonal, which students enjoy working in groups with other students. They have strong social relationships and empathize well with others. A classroom tip would be to use group work and plan social activities like role plays, discussions, and email and writing correspondence, which students can connect with one another through writing and multimedia. The next intelligence is musical intelligence. These students are sensitive to rhythms and sounds, be it music or outside noises even. Classroom tip would be play light music in the background or use jazz chants, which you can find online, which is a method of teaching that utilizes rhythm for students to remember content and concepts. The next intelligence is logical and mathematical. These students think in calculations and reasoning and like to use these types of techniques for learning. They think in the abstract and really need time to digest these concepts before putting them into action. Some classroom tips would be to use puzzles, experiments, and web quests online, as well as investigation activities to engage the learners in the classroom content. Next, bodily and kinesthetic intelligence is when students like to use their bodies and movement in order to learn. They can communicate best through movement and body language. The classroom tip would be to try out total physical response techniques or maybe sensory stations to get students utilizing their sense of movement and touch. Linguistic and verbal intelligences are about learners who are all about words and often think and see in words. They also have highly developed auditory skills and can excel in word games, poetry, or storytelling. A classroom tip would be to find creative uses for words like poems, storytelling, and word games. Lastly, visual and spatial learners think in terms of physical space and learn best through visual aids. A classroom tip here would be to use models, puzzles, maps, videos, and other multimedia to get students engaged. So, as an educator, taking all of this in might seem a little bit overwhelming at first, but there are so many creative and engaging resources out there that you can use in your classroom that will make it more effective, more engaging, and help students to reach and achieve their full potential as learners. The most important thing to remember is that learners come in all different shapes, sizes, cognitions, talents, skills, and it's our job as educators to provide the space for them to explore those different learning styles and talents. Whether you see a student struggling tremendously or exceeding beyond all expectations, learning styles may be playing a big role in how they're achieving their goals and how they're taking in that knowledge. There are a plethora of learning styles resources and quizzes out there on the internet, so go do some research and see how you can bring them into your classroom and determine your learners' learning styles. If you're interested in more tips, tricks, and resources, be sure to check out my website, links down below at www.thelivingRoomEnglishSchool.weebly.com. And if you're interested in freebie curriculum plans, go on over to Teachers Pay Teachers and look up The Living Room, and there you'll find a plethora of freebies and also some awesome, authentic, and engaging lesson plans for sale as well. Be sure to follow along and subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, also links down below. Got a comment, suggestion, or qualm? Also, go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll see you next time on The Breakdown.